Okay, we will call the meeting of the Healthy Neighborhoods Advisory Committee for April 3rd to order. We have quorum, so we will, first look at entertaining a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, so minutes are approved. Okay, I don't see anybody for public appearances for non-agenda items, so we will move right on into agenda review. So we have 3 items on the agenda tonight. Parks and Hub update with Scott Endel. I'm going to be talking about that. We will have a discussion about Resolution R5724, so we'll be talking about funding awards for the Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program. And then at the end, Deanna, you have a bit on the committee, commission, and board staff contact guide. So
I do. Thank you.
okay. All right, agenda item 1, Parks and Hub update. Scott, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity. Should I go ahead and work through this?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. We'll follow as we are able.
Very good. And actually, what I have been doing the last a month, we're in the process of updating our park and open space plan, and certainly I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Deanna and Brad from the planning department. They're really the planning arm of the parks department, so we certainly want to thank them for all of their assistance. I'd like to take this chance to kind of give you a quick 10-minute state of the Park and Rec department, if I could, and then roll into the Park and Open Space Plan update. And what I am finding too when I'm visiting each of the different committees, and it's the same for the Healthy Neighborhoods group, that everybody really has, whether it be a goal or an action item within the plan, it really is identified specifically with each of your groups. So it is kind of a neat exercise that I've been going through. Before I get into the plan, I did want to share a couple observations, and I did ask Deanna to include information in your packet. And what I do at the Park and Rec department is I do an annual report. And when we last updated the Park and Open Space Plan, it was in 2015. And now we're updating it in 2024, which is 9 years later, if you would. And it just gave me an opportunity to kind of reflect back on where we were in 2015 and where we currently are. And if you look at your packet, the first host report is of 2015. And then if I could, and the host reports are kind of divided into 3 sections. We have the staffing, the budget, and then a little bit about the general park information. And when I compared the staff in the Park and Rec department in 2015, and the department includes, park, forestry, Anna Healy as a forester, and also Chad Siegel and his team at the recreation department. They do all the recreational programming and facility scheduling. In 2015, we had 10.25 of full-time equivalents in our department, and currently we have 11.75 full-time equivalents in 2024. If you look at the middle portion, the budget information, in 2015, our budget was a little bit over $1 million in comparison to today, which is almost $2 million. So it definitely has grown in support from the council. One kind of interesting note, I did include in the budget, we include the amount of revenues that are collected through the department, which includes recreational program registration fees, shelter rentals, community center rentals. In 2019, if you look at that item, we brought in almost $260,000 in revenue. And then compared to 15, it was about 200,000. And today in 2023, it was 270,000 or so. But what was interesting to me, if you notice, in 2019, it was 260. But then in 2020, it went down to 70,000. And if you recall, that was the COVID years that everything was pretty much shut down. But what's interesting, in 2023, we're back up to the pre-COVID revenue amounts with an additional $10,000. Also, I've included the tree planted. In 2023, we had 401 trees planted, and the Park and Forestry Department, they plant trees within the street right away, along with within our parks. And a lot of these trees are new developments. What happens when a new development comes in, the developer is responsible for the purchase of trees that go within the terrace. So those tree plantings are included in that number of 401. Another pretty stark difference from 2015 to 2024 in regards to the general park information. In 2015, we had 507 acres of parkland. In comparison to today, we have 788. So you can definitely see the growth within the park system and also within developments. I included in your information the parkland dedication fee schedule, along with the park improvement fee schedule, and that's where we receive a lot of additional parkland, is when we get new developments along with dollars to improve those specific parks. One other thing that I might note that's different from 2024 to 2015 in the general park information, we've added a dog park at the bottom of the list there, Sunnyside. We have included an inclusive playground. We've added a disc golf course, which is part of our golf course, 8 pickleball courts. And then actually in 2024, we've got 30 plus miles of bike trails that are maintained in comparison to 2015, when we had about 20 miles. So those I thought were pretty interesting. And then just to give you a little bit of context as far as the park system. Within the park system, we have 15 small gazebos. We have 14 tennis courts, 8 pickleball courts, 12 large shelters, with the majority of those are rented by residents. We have 13 ball fields, 22 half basketball courts, 6 full court basketball hoops, and 40 playground structures within the park system. So I just did want to take that opportunity to speak about that, kind of give you an update of the Parks Department. But then if we could actually roll into the Park and Open Space Plan update. And again, this is the Parks Department action document. And this in 2024, we're actually updating the plan from 2015. And if you begin to roll through that, which I've included in your packet, one thing I want to draw your attention to is the vision statement within the park plan. And I think it is pertinent to the group, or to the work that your group does. And if I might just read it, recreation in public spaces can take many different forms. Conventional forms include basketball, volleyball courts, baseball, softball diamonds, play equipment, natural activities such as walking and hiking. These conventional forms will always have a place in public spaces. The section of the plan looks beyond these conventional forms and looks at recreation and public spaces through the following framework. We've identified 3 S's within the park system: sociable, solitude, and seams. And these are really the goals that we try to create within the park system, and certainly when we create new parks. And if you think of sociable, you think of gathering locations, places where people gather, and really that's the function of the park the Parks Department within our community is it provides locations for people to gather and socialize. It also provides solitude. Our different, our parks are very diverse in their activities, whether it be active or passive. So we do provide locations for people to relax, if you would. You might think of nature, and then Seams, which is really kind of a cool component of our park system, where we really try to connect all of the different parks through our trail system, and then also connect those local trails to our regional trails within the Dane County and the city of Fitchburg. And then if we go into the vision, the city of Fitchburg Park Open Space Rec System strives for an appropriate balance of passive and active recreational social opportunities and responsible preservation and sustainable stewardship of the city's natural environment and resources is identified there. And then actually goal number 1, which I think I highlighted, which really pertains to your group potentially, with the idea of equitable opportunities, equal access, and certainly the healthy neighborhoods are an area within the community that we want to continue to try and provide access and equitable facilities for. Goal number 5, provide recreational program and services in an accessible and equitable manner that reflects existing and future recreational demands and trends, which I think relates to your group. And then if we roll into the action items, the one I highlighted is number 4. Let me read that. That relates to continue planning our community scale facilities. And this is where we actually identify, which we'll talk a little bit about in a second, our Fish Hatchery Road hub, which is really pertinent to the idea of providing some services to our healthy neighborhoods. So that's identified there. And then what other one? And then it's number 12, which I think relates to certainly with the healthy neighborhood and the grant programs. We try to create new recreational programs and services. And then actually the last one is number 15, where we really try to work creatively on creating services in an equitable and financially responsible way. And this is where the Healthy Neighborhood Initiative really is important in helping provide these services to our healthy neighborhoods. So I wanted to do that. And then actually, if we could roll, I believe I included in your packet some current projects that we're working on, which really are related to the Healthy Neighborhood Committee. The first one that we're working on is the hub. And I did include the drawing, the rendering of the hub. And I will tell you that we're very close to bidding the hub project this month, and hopefully get some prices in the middle of May, and maybe award the contract and get construction of the hub underway in June of this year. And we're anticipating it would take about 12 months to complete the construction of it. I did also include the Stoner Prairie Park Plan, which is another initiative we're working on. And then also the Egg Park, which is another initiative. And then I did ask Deanna to include the CIP, which identifies the dollars that are allocated for the Southdale Park improvements, which is in 2024. But that's another healthy neighborhood that we're trying to provide some additional services and resources to. So with that, I thank you for the time, and certainly am open to any questions or thoughts that the group may have. I was a little bit long-winded there, but I think I rolled through it pretty quickly. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, we very much appreciate it. This is a great document. Lots of really relevant info. I mean, to the city, to everyone, and to this committee. So, anybody have any questions? Jay?
Yeah, Scott, I had called you earlier and just wanted to, see if you could present to this committee an update on the Southdale Park. We have, I think we have $460,000 in the budget for this year to kind of redo stuff in that park since it's all falling apart. And the basketball court's done, right?
Yep, correct. But we've also planted some additional trees. And what we've done, Jay, is we commissioned a landscape architect who was able to put together a couple different alternate plans. And what I'm in the process of doing now is making sure that the plans that they've provided are within the budget parameters that we have within the CIP. And my hope is to get that done, completed this month in April, so that I can take the plan to the Park Commission in May for their comments. And then certainly at that point in time, I know where the mayor has been interested, and you've been interested, Jay, in having a meeting. And certainly through the park planning process, we need to have that public component. And the idea of potentially in May, I could see that we could potentially, have a meeting in the Southdale neighborhood and gather comments on the draft plan of the improvements that we were looking to include. And then if we're all good, then there's the bidding documents and the bidding process and those kinds of things. And I share, as you shared with me, the same interest and goal in trying to get some work done this year, Jay. But as I mentioned too, there is some steps that need to be gone through and some processes, and it's April already, as you mentioned. But we could, I hate to say that we're going to end up doing something this year. I guess I would prefer to say that we'll work to try and get something completed this year with the hope of getting something done. Kind of under promise, over deliver kind of thing.
So is the consultant that we've retained, are they going to be presenting a couple of different options for what could be done there, and that the residents could maybe choose from, or maybe mix and match or something? Because I really think in this neighborhood especially, it's important that the residents have a significant role in determining how that park is going to be.
Certainly, and what we did is we commissioned a landscape architect to come up with two different alternatives for us, Jay, within the budget. And we're, like I say, we're working to try and finalize those that plan, which certainly, the neighborhood could react to that plan. I think they're going to be pretty happy with what we're looking to include, which would be at this point, I don't want to get ahead of my skis, but the idea of bringing a lot of the newer kind of facilities more towards the road. We are looking at a potential small spray amenity, potentially a shelter with bathrooms, certainly some updated playground, and maybe a little bit different route for the path. Certainly in the middle, we want to keep the open play area. And you're familiar with the park too, Jay. There, it doesn't really allow for many more things than that, but certainly looking to create some updated amenities for the residents.
Great.
I also had a question. So I'm really glad that the Parks Commission is looking at through an sustainability lens at locations of parks and, where resources are going with regards to making sure that resources are going to parks that really need it. And I was looking specifically at the themes of different parks. I noticed you have a theme of agriculture. And I have a couple of questions around this. Well, one is, it says that there is a park called Terra Vesa Agriculture Park. And when I Googled this, all I found was that there was a Terra Vesa apartment complex, maybe, in Fitchburg. Can you tell me more about this Terra Vesa Agriculture Park? And I have a reason for drilling down on agriculture.
Well, in actually, if you look at your packet, I did include in your packet the Terra Vesa Park Master Plan.
It's on page 13, by the way.
Okay, spectacular.
And then if you
Got it.
And if you look at the big plan, that is the whole Terra Vesa on the corner of Goodland and Sain Road. Well, it's on Goodland Road. And then if you turn on the second page, it's the white perforated area. That's going to be our concentration area. And then you can see the type of improvements we're looking to have there. And one of the big things that we're working on is, education and those kinds of things. I know currently within our park system, we have 4 parks, including Southdale now, that have community gardens. We have over 100 individual garden plots within those 4 park systems. But actually, the Egg Park, we're really, and this is a little bit beyond what we're able to do larger acreage, to do smaller scale agriculture. We don't currently have the ability to do that, but this facility would allow us to get to that level of agriculture.
I see. Yes, thank you for that explanation. I was particularly curious about agriculture because many of the locations, our priority neighborhoods, have in the past and currently still struggle with food insecurity. And these parks seem like they could really provide a really wonderful opportunity for the city of Fitchburg to provide a useful service to the neighborhood. So I was wondering if there were thoughts around expanding the agriculture theme to more parks.
Well, and certainly, and I know in Southdale there currently is a community garden within Southdale, so we'll continue that. The big thing with the community gardens in the parks, one of the things that's needed in order to have a community garden within a park is a garden leader, and that, I guess, is from the perspective that the neighborhood is truly interested, because they tend to be self-supporting. Certainly the Parks Department is there to support, but it really isn't an initiative of the specific park and potentially a garden leader in that specific park to help us with the management of that facility. And that's what like I say, we've got a garden leader in Southdale Park, Quarry Hill, Swan Creek, and Briarwood. So that's really kind of the first, I would say, need in order to have a community garden within a park.
And last question, that edible tree grove, is that something that could be scaled to other parks as well?
Well, and again, it's capacity, right? Those type of landscapes certainly need care and maintenance. So it's always the how are we going to get them maintained, which is really the tough part of it. And actually, with the Egg Park at Terra Vesa, the idea of working, I've received proposals from Rooted to help us, similar to what we do with the Nine Springs Golf Course, where we have a contracted provider that helps us manage those resources and those facilities, and they maintain those facilities. Certainly, it would be a cost that would need to be approved by the council in regards to operations. But it's always the capacity issue. Currently, we don't have the capacity to do edible landscapes, but not to say that we shouldn't try to do it. But it always comes with the the piece of maintaining those facilities.
Okay,
Yeah, Scott, I just wanted 2 comments because the idea of the edible trees I loved that idea. A long time ago on Midvale Boulevard in Madison, all of those trees in the median used to be apple trees and pear trees. And my first wife and I used to go down there and collect apples, and we'd get bushels of apples and make quarts of applesauce that would last, for years. And they pulled all those trees out because the neighbors started complaining about pests that were eating the fruit. It was attracting, excess numbers of raccoons and squirrels and whatnot.
Sure.
But that's just not a good reason to yank all those trees out. And so now they're just, your basic, street planting trees. So I would love to see more of that in the city, in the places where we have space to do it, because they do take a considerable amount of space. And I know Madison, I remember Madison would have to water those. They'd have to drive down there with a watering truck to water them a few times a year. But I think they pulled all those out. God, that must have been in 95 or 96, and just switched them back to regular street trees. But what's the so you and I were up in Southdale Park last year looking at that community garden, and there's quite a few plots there, and a lot of them were definitely being used. What's the current situation there? Did we get all that garbage cleaned up and all the branches?
Yep. And actually, I'm working with Nicholas. I don't recall his last name, but he's kind of my conduit between Alfonso. I think it's Alfonso and Southdale Community Garden. So they're up and running, and we'll support them just like we support all of our other community gardens and remove the debris and drop off mulch and all of those kinds of things. So no, they're going to be included in our community gardens within the park system. That's for sure.
Scott, I think it's worth noting that all 3 of these initiatives, or as far as parks, the the communities have weighed in on how it should look and what should be incorporated. I know with Terra Vesa, this Chambers was full of residents from the area and from the city. And they all, a lot of them had various opinions, but you had a number of options for this particular location as well. I think this is the one we settled on.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, that's correct, Andy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Don't see any. Well, thank you very much, Scott. Look forward to looking at this more in depth later. If I have any questions, I'm sure I'll email you.
Very good. Well, and we're in the public comment phase, so certainly any comments are welcome and appreciated.
Certainly. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Bye.
Okay. That was fun. Okay. So move on to the next agenda item. Discussing the funding awards for the Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program. It's a Big discussion. Okay. You want to lead us off, Deanna? Talk
Yeah,
about-
I will just introduce the topic, just to say that the Planning Department city staff received 15 applications for the 2024 Healthy Neighborhoods Grant Program, of which 14 were eligible. A total of $173 and $922 is requested in the total for the 14 applications, and that amount the requested funding does exceed our available funding for the program this year in 2024. The grant program has $138,000 in funding, which includes approximately $10,000 in some rollover funds. The last time we met at the beginning of March, the committee hosted presentations from all 14 of the eligible applicants. And then the committee members completed online evaluations for each one of those applications. A copy of that evaluation form is available. If there's any questions, I'm happy to go over that. A total of 70 evaluations were completed by committee members, with each application receiving a minimum of 4 evaluations. To assist the committee, staff analyzed the evaluation results and developed recommendations based on those results. I did provide a couple links to some of the spreadsheets if there's any specific questions. Staff is making a recommendation to the committee to fund all of the applications, but on a sliding scale based on the overall evaluation, which there was an overall evaluation based on a four-point scale, and each application ranged from about 3.7577 to 2.908. So staff has just prepared a recommendation of funding, partial funding for each application, with a slightly higher amount or percentage of the requested funding for applications that received a higher score. So this is just a staff recommendation. The committee can reevaluate that, make changes, switch around the funding amounts. That is what's up next for your all's discussion. Depending on how that discussion goes, staff is asking for a recommendation on the resolution this evening, and hopefully an approval of a funding level this evening, so that we can keep on our time schedule and make a council agenda on April 9th. And so I will leave it there.
All right. Thank you. So, so I guess we need to discuss this, and then we'll probably need a motion to approve as is, and then amend that, or
You'll make a motion to amend. We'll take the motion to amend, and if that passes, and then we would make a
motion to
vote
approve.
on the entire resolution. But
Got it.
we'll begin with any amendments. That's what we'll host first.
Okay. Yeah. I hope everyone had an opportunity to take a look at the suggestions that staff put together. They were pretty well rounded in my opinion. Looking at all the different requests, it's hard. Last month we had a lot of all the presentations, and it's hard. Like Jay, I think you mentioned earlier this evening, it's hard to say we don't want to fund you because all of the work is good work. So, yeah. Does anybody have any specific discussions, questions, concerns about the suggested funding amounts?
I had one comment for moving forward, Deanna. One of the things that would have been really helpful is in the table 2 where staff provided their recommendations, is if we also had a column on there that said what they requested.
Okay.
Because, and I was just looking through, because with a 622-page agenda packet, it's really hard to find a useful thing. So, like, when we said we funded Centro Hispano of Dane County to $3,000, well, what did they request, and what will they be able to do with $3,000? Will they be able to do anything? I mean, is that was, I know that's a question that came up in previous years when we've talked about this. Is, are they able to, can they run a program? Can they do something with that amount, or can they only do it with the full amount they requested? And, you know, I know it's a nonprofit, so they'll take anything they can get, but, you know, those would have been some of the things that would have been helpful pieces of information to have.
I certainly can share one of the links from in the memo. I linked out some spreadsheets, and I can certainly share, at least for you right now, the requested amount and then the staff recommendation.
I did also just send via email my personal copy that I had made of like the organization name, the requested amount, and then
okay.
the staff recommendation amount. So you can see that in email too, but maybe Deanna has something nicer.
I would just, thank you very much, Ari.
Oh, look at that. Oh, I don't
Yeah,
know.
I was going a little crazy with the numbers, so I needed to organize my thoughts.
Sure.
Oh, that is so helpful.
I also have other columns in my spreadsheet, such as how many times this organization has already previously requested funds, or like what their funds are being requested for in general. But yeah.
As I was watching the last meeting, I was just astounded at the number of, you know, I'm a fairly middle-class white guy, and so I don't ever have to think about things like, what am I going to eat tomorrow? That's not a question that I ever have to deal with, and it just astounds me that living in this country in 2024, there are still people who have to ask that question. They don't know, and so, you know, I've been in Southdale when the river has been there. I was there a few times this past summer when River was there, handing out their food, and I talked to some of the residents who were like, you know, if this wasn't here, we don't. How would we feed our kids? They don't even know. So it was really, it's really something that that I think is important, these food programs, because there's so many people who just, and especially now with you know, the inflation that we've had the last year and a half or two. Someone even mentioned that at the last meeting, that, you know, their costs for buying this stuff has gone up too. So yeah, I think it's just amazing to see. It's amazing that we live in a country where this is still an issue.
Sure. And I mean, even going back to last fall when we had the neighborhood navigator come in and speak with us, you know, one of the questions posed to her was, what is the most pressing need that you see from folks that are coming to you for resources? And food security was the number one thing on her list. And that was good information to know, because when we're talking about funding these organizations and these programs, we should probably, in my opinion, we should be looking at that number one concern and making sure that that's covered as much as possible before we even look at anything else.
Well, I want to maybe caution us trying to put a Band-Aid on symptoms as opposed to addressing root causes. So I mean, like, I absolutely you know, I see where you're coming from, and I also want to be just a little bit cautious with full steam ahead. Let's put, you know, so much money towards necessarily food security. That being said, I have a recommendation for a amendment or revision to the numbers. And for the most part, I'm just so appreciative of you, Deanna, for doing a first pass. My one recommendation for change would be Centro Hispano of Dane County. I would like to recommend that they get their full funding of $4,000 as opposed to the staff recommendation of $3,000. And it was a really hard choice, but I'm going to make the recommendation that the money comes from Badger Prairie Needs Network, who has requested money from us every single year and has gotten it every single year. And, you know, 14,000 versus 13,000. I mean, there's no good choice here, but I do want to put that forward as an option for people to discuss of fully funding the summer school. That helps young middle schoolers develop their Hispanic identity in a culture that is very overwhelmingly white.
Well, I guess before we do that, I will just make a motion to approve the staff recommendation, and then we can have an amendment.
Thank you, Jay.
Okay. And then a motion to,
Beautiful. And
Amend.
then a motion to amend the staff recommendation in order to make Centro Hispano of Dane County, instead of having $3,000, have $4,000. And then Badger Prairie Needs Network, instead of having $14,000, having $13,000.
Second.
okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous.
One of the things that I was, so I got an email, it was about a month ago, from a resident in Southdale who said, my landlord has said that they're increasing my rent by $200 a month, and that is because the city of Fitchburg raised the property taxes. So I actually took the time to go and pull up the property tax records for his apartment building, and it turns out that Fitchburg's impact on the rent for his unit is $66, not $200. So the landlord was just taking an opportunity to make some more money. But I was surprised that we don't have, and I don't even know what organizations would be involved with that, but we don't have more people who are trying to help with housing in this list. And I don't know how we go about publicizing the fact that we have this program. And, you know, right now, I mean, we obviously had more requests than what we have money, but the city does right now have $8 million in a fund that's supposed to be for affordable housing. And there's not really any direction with that right now. But I think I'm going to talk to the mayor and request that anything with that, because I know it's going to go to CEDA and it's going to go to the housing committee, and I think that should also come here for discussion, because you know there's so many people that I got a call from someone else in December who was being evicted from her apartment because she was $200 short on her rent, and that just should never happen. That, you know, there's $200. I mean, you know, that's something that there's got to be a way to deal with a problem like that. And I didn't even know what resources to give her, where she could go to find it. I mean, I just don't know. So hopefully, as we move through some of these other processes, we will come up with some better answers.
I would like to make a recommendation that either this committee or some other committee in the city of Fitchburg looks into, and I did some research on this before, but I sent it over to Deanna, and then it was with the Tenant Resource Center, and they are very overwhelmed with requests, including from City of Fitchburg residents, needing assistance with understanding their rights with regards to eviction processes. Okay. Okay.
I apologize.
Shaking your head, I was like, oh, should I not be talking about this
No,
right now?
no.
Okay. And anyway, the Tenant Resource Center is this really wonderful resource that they do not have the resources to support our residents. But one thing that I talked with a very wonderful person over there about would be that if the city of Fitchburg could afford to pay for a part-time like once a week or twice a week counselor to come to maybe the North Fish Hatchery Hub that's being built or some other location, they could provide services to tenants on a particular day at a particular time and be in the area to answer questions and educate people about their rights and help them through whatever they're going through with regards to housing. And I really think that would be an amazing program.
I think the senior center does something like that on occasion, like maybe twice a year, where they have someone who comes in and talks to seniors about their living situations as they get older. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that with people in these other neighborhoods.
Yeah, I think the question as it relates to this committee and the grant funding is whether or not those sorts of programs or what type of funding falls within the intent or spirit of the grant program versus some other funding mechanism. And I think that's always going to be a challenge, right? Because with limited amounts of funds, people are often, we should push it off on some other group or push it off on this group or this, this body to solve the problem. And so eventually somebody has to take it up. Otherwise, everyone makes it not their problem per se. But I think it does make sense for us to have that discussion depending on the program, right? If it's an ongoing program, in my mind, the grant program that we fund typically is, in my mind, for things that are, I wouldn't say one-off because we regularly give funding for summer programs that are ongoing, but they're very targeted to a specific thing. They're not sort of funding an ongoing department or an ongoing role per se. That doesn't mean they couldn't, but that's the way I've seen the grant funding program be utilized up until now. And I think that was last year we had a discussion about housing and how it might fit, housing supports might fit into the grant program, and that was, I think, a part of that sticking point as well.
Right. The idea would definitely be that this would have to be in addition to the grant program. The grant program probably would not have capacity to swallow up a request to have a person to provide, education and assistance to tenants.
Sure. That said, if there was an organization, a nonprofit that came to us with an application that said, hey, this year I want to open up a housing clinic or something like that in one of our public places, and I need funding for this year to do these workshops, that would absolutely fit into the grant program. So I would love to see a group do that for sure. Of course, that doesn't address any of the existing applicants. So that's neither here nor there. So maybe we keep that in mind for further discussions throughout the year. And try to stay focused on the existing grant money. Welcome, Caitlin.
If anyone knows and is watching the YouTube video later about this program, please encourage any program that is doing that work to apply for our grant next year, please.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, we made the one amended item. Are there any other of the funding items, the funding organizations, recommendations that staff made that people want to discuss the amount of, or maybe want us to consider changing? I know there's a number of them. I guess I'll bring up one just personally that I looked at and was a little bit of a difficulty for me, and it relates to housing, and that's the road home. Their presentation was really powerful. I appreciate what they do in the community, and I love that they want to expand their offering to help another family. My thought process was thinking, well, they're looking for $10,000, or I'm sorry, they were looking for $15,000 for their organization to expand, and that $15,000 would enable them to enroll one additional family. And I was thinking to myself, well, if we're talking about utilizing money to affect the most number of people, that's a fairly large tranche of money for one family. But on the flip side, who else might that family then, it might trickle out more into the community if they're able to be more stable too. So that's a difficult one. And I see, looks like staff is recommending to fund at 10,000 versus the 15. So they get some funding, not the full 15. I don't know if anybody else had any opinions on that or not. Okay.
I could share.
Sure.
I'm so sorry, first of all, that I am late. But I think based on the conversations that I've had with a couple of JFF social workers and the impact of the road home, I was very aware of the sort of smaller scale of where the money goes in that case and with that organization. But I think that from what I've heard from folks who are working directly with families, the impact of that money has been really huge. And so I think it's more of a sort of inch wide, mile deep type of impact than the mile wide, inch deep. And so I was really excited that they applied for the grant. And I do feel like it would be fairly different than the other organizations that we are going to be funding. And so I was happy that it would provide just some diversity to what we're offering, and a real depth of support that I think will be really impactful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it benefits us to have some diversity of programs in terms of scale, and like you said, in terms of depth, how deeply it's going to affect maybe a smaller population versus a larger population within the whole of the grant funding for the year. So I don't disagree. I guess my only concern, and this is just a general concern from all of these, and this is something that I've kind of raised before, is the question of, it's hard for us as a committee to understand whether or not funding any of these organizations at less than their request, how that's going to affect their ability to actually put on the program or facilitate whatever they're attempting to utilize, right? There are some groups that have large amounts of matching funds, and there are other groups that have essentially none, or very little. And so that, in my mind, I look at the groups that don't have a lot of matching funds or don't seem to have a lot of extra money that they could maybe shift to handle some of these programs, as being ones that are maybe worthy of looking to fund fully, simply because they may be limited if they don't get fully funded, whereas other organizations may be able to shift a few $1,000s here and there to make all of the programs that they're looking to have happen.
As I was looking over the road home. I mean, they seem to have their fingers in everything. Like it's like they're doing some food distribution. They're helping people who in homeless situations. They're helping people who need to post bail so they can get out of jail. I mean, they seem to be doing like a gazillion different things, and it was unclear to me exactly what they were proposing to do in Fitchburg for Fitchburg residents. And I apologize, I wasn't able to be here at that meeting to ask that question, but I understand they want to do this to help one more family, but how do they identify that family? Is that going to be a Fitchburg family? Is it going to be, I didn't understand exactly what they were asking for the money to do.
Yeah.
But having said that, they do a lot of good things, so.
Sure. I don't want to put words in their mouth. I don't remember their presentation verbatim, but I believe that the application process would be open to Fitchburg residents. I don't know that they had committed specifically to it being a Fitchburg family or resident to be in the program.
I can just jump in. A requirement of spending these dollars, it has to directly serve Fitchburg residents, particularly residents in the priority neighborhoods. That is a requirement.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I think if my understanding is correct, the way we do this is we will vote on this, we'll approve something tonight, and then those organizations going to go and do what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And then after they've gotten done doing it, they send us a report that says, we did what we said we were going to do, so please send us the money now, right?
Essentially, staff does request receipts wherever possible. They need to show where the funding has gone. We do check that over. Staff does our very best to confirm that it's served Fitchburg residents.
So, but my point is that the money doesn't actually get dispersed until they demonstrate that they've done something to help Fitchburg residents.
You are correct.
So, I mean, in looking at the whole package of what the requests were that we got, since I didn't get the sense that there was any guarantee that the road home was actually going to benefit a Fitchburg family or Fitchburg people, then they might not end up getting the money anyway. And then, great, we have $10,000 to roll over into next year, but the need is right now. So, I'm kind of talking myself into the idea that maybe we should take that $10,000 and redistribute it to some of these other groups and tell them that we'd be happy to have them apply again someday if they can guarantee that their work is going to benefit Fitchburg residents.
But, and Deanna just mentioned it, they must commit to supporting a Fitchburg resident, not what you're stating is that you think the money will go elsewhere.
They might not. I mean, they weren't, from what I heard in their presentation, they were not guaranteeing that a Fitchburg resident was going to be helped by this.
Well, I mean, understanding that the application
Wait,
process.
Caitlin's had
Oh,
her
I'm
hand
sorry.
up for a really long time.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I just I felt that they were clear in their application. They mentioned that the family that they would support with this money would either come from the Southdale neighborhood or I believe it was the North Fitch Hatchery neighborhood. So I'd hate to see them not be considered for funding for that reason, because when I read the application, it seemed quite clear that they would sponsor a family with that money from one of those two priority neighborhoods within Fitchburg. And then the money goes to It's primarily housing stability, and so they the money goes to sort of long-term rent payment and stability, and then they provide wraparound services with other they work along with Joining Forces for Families and other organizations to make sure that they're supporting the families that are receiving this housing support so that they can really get on their feet and then be able to get to a point where they're able to support themselves entirely.
Okay.
Sure, and I think
I'll withdraw my concern.
it makes sense. Like if they're going to apply for a grant where the stipulation is that the funds have to be used for Fitchburg residents and in the priority neighborhoods, it wouldn't make much sense for them to apply for it if that wasn't the intent. I think that's implied in the intent in the application process. So I'm less concerned about that.
But I think we've had that in the past, haven't we? We've had somebody who applied for the funds and then didn't actually use them within Fitchburg or didn't provide the right justification or something. I think there was one.
It has happened in the past that the organization awarded funding was just unable for some reasons to fulfill what they had committed under the grant. That has happened. It's rare. But it has happened.
My concern here is we just talked about that we need more applicants to step up for affordable housing or somewhere within that realm. And here we're talking about taking money away from one of the only programs here that is directed at affordable housing. So I would like to see it stay, to be quite honest.
Agreed. I agree with that. I think there's a lot of organizations that have put forward applications for food security, which is, like I said, it's been said that that's kind of the number one issue, but I have to imagine that the number two issue or a collaborating issue to food security is housing security, because you can't. Right. If you can't afford housing, if you can't secure housing, it makes it hard to get access to food and to prepare food and to do all those things. So, covering all of it, I think, is a good idea. Yeah. So yeah, I honestly like the rest of the items that were listed as for funding and the amounts seem to make mostly a lot of sense to me. I'm sure you struggled with the the numbers that you made a suggestion of. I'm struggling to come up with a solution that doesn't involve pulling away money from an organization that should get it. So,
I think we have a.
Could I jump in with one more question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so again, I was late, and so if this was already addressed, I'm really sorry. Just let me know. Something that I noticed in the grant applications was an overlap between the Boys and Girls Club requests and the Allied Food Pantry. It appeared to me that they were both asking for money for the Allied Food Pantry. Did I misunderstand that? Did other people notice that?
I'm in agreement.
If that is the case, I would.
Yeah. I thought.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Caitlin. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I would have to agree with you. It was in the back of my mind. There was some question as well, but I think you're validating that concern of mine that I guess I just don't know enough about.
Yeah, I think they.
I was just curious if we would maybe want to keep that. If they're both for the food pantry, to me, it might make sense, unless I'm misunderstanding, for the combined grant amount to equal 15,000 as a max, because it appears to be the same grant application from two different people.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at the staff suggested funding, and we've got 10,000 for Boys and Girls Club and 6,500 for Allied Food Pantry. So that's $1,500 more than a combined 15,000. So if we were considering awarding both organizations a combined 15, we would have $1,500 to reallocate somewhere else. So I guess my question would be, if we did that, where would that $1,500 go?
Maybe the road home. There was a recommendation initially that actually, we should be funding. I mean, but before we kind of got down the rabbit hole of like, are they in Fitchburg or not? There was actually, it sounded like a recommendation to increase funding to the road home. So that, I think, was already mentioned by somebody.
So they would go to 11,500 of a requested 15,000. I could see an argument for that.
So the Allied Food Pantry is the one that's actually got an office in the Boys and Girls Club, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, I guess I would entertain a motion to amend if anybody wanted to change some of that funding.
Okay, I'll make a motion to amend that involves, let's see, if we make the Allied Food Pantry 6,000 instead of 6,500, and if we make the Boys and Girls Club 9,000 instead of 10,000, then we could also make the road home 11,500 instead of 10,000. So that's the motion.
Okay.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. We will make that change. Or rather, I should say, Deanna will make that change. As you're
I have noted the motion.
furiously noting it. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, do we have any other discussion about any of these other applications and the funding requests or suggestions? Sort of a wide open opportunity to comment.
All right.
Okay. Well,
Before, I
Sure.
was just trying to read the Boys and Girls Club scope of their project. But it says Boys and Girls Club of Dane County is proposing the City of Fitchburg funding for our Allied Food Security Program. So that does seem to be a duplicate. Although they don't mention in their application the church, so I don't know if they are doing a separate food program from the church or if it's a combined effort. There were some things about it that were really unclear.
well, I'll also note, and again, there's way too much to read at the moment to see if
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to, in the moment, right? But one of the notes in the application for, is this the Boys and Girls Club? It talks about partnering with Little John's, and if you've been paying attention to the news, that partnership did not pan out. So I'm not sure how that affects the situation. If the funding was intended to help fund that, and what it would do in lieu of that. Challenge. I guess in any event, we've adjusted the funding already.
Yes.
For them. I'm not seeing any other funding suggestions that I have any questions about or that I would really have any desire to make any changes to personally. So, if we don't have any other discussion, I don't want to drag it out too long. I understand there's a lot to look at, but I guess that we should probably entertain a motion to approve then as amended.
Well, it's already on the table.
That is already on the table. You're right.
So we do have a motion on the table to approve the staff recommendations. That motion was made by Alder J. Allen and seconded by Alder Randy Udell. And then we have our first motion by to amend by Ari Lowe, which would bring Central Hispana to full funding of $4,000 and thereby reduce funding for Badger Prairie Needs Network to $13,000. That was seconded by Alder J. Allen, and the motion carried. And then we have a second amendment, also by Ari Lowe, and seconded by Alder J. Allen, to reduce Allied Food Pantry funding to $6,000 and Boys and Girls Club funding to $9,000 for a total of both for $15,000, and there use those additional funds to increase the funding of the road home to $11,500, and that motion did carry. Any corrections?
I think that's accurate. Okay. All right. Any other motions to amend?
And I did just send out a new email with what my understanding is of what the staff recommendation is at this point, or what the proposal is at this point.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I guess we vote. If no one has any motions to amend. All right, I guess all in favor of approving as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Oh, Caitlin. All right, motion carries. Okay, excellent. Thank you all very much. It's tough to discuss this stuff because there's just so much information and yeah, it's hard to wrap our heads around. So appreciate everybody spending the time and taking that into account, and staff for putting in that work ahead of time to put together the suggestions. Okay, next item on the agenda would be staff has a little bit of an update on the staff contact guide.
Okay, so I've included the City of Fitchburg's committees, commissions, and board staff guide 2024. And this is a reference item for you that includes information about our all of the committees, commissions, and boards in the city, some of the things that happen before a meeting, during a meeting, and after a meeting. Kind of a basic reference guide. I do not foresee that the H&I, the Healthy Neighborhoods Advisory Committee, will see any changes. We have already been functioning and consistently with this guide, but I'm happy to take any questions or if there's any concerns.
Were there changes in this?
Not from what has come before other committees. The administration has just asked all of the staff reps to bring this item for a reference to each of the committees and commissions. It's the same thing that's been shared with council.
Yeah, I just had a question that has nothing to do with this committee, so I will ask it somewhere else. Because you probably don't know why Board of Review uses the city clerk as the staff contact when it should be the assessor.
You are correct. I do not have the answer.
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that to everyone's attention. I'll have to page through this, see if there's any interesting stuff that I have a question about, which I can do offline. Anybody else have any other questions or comments on the agenda item? Nope. All right. Thank you very much. Next agenda item is report from department.
I do have a couple of updates for the committee. We're moving quickly now through the process of hiring the community development specialist. HR has informed me earlier this week that we have 16 wonderful applicants. So that's a lot. And so we'll be working through that applicant list and then scheduling interviews in the next couple of weeks here. And hopefully when the next time that we all meet, I'll have at least a name to for this position. We're very excited, and of course, this position will be the primary contact for the Healthy Neighborhoods Advisory Committee. Of course, I will be always available too. A couple other things. So, of course, the Parks Director gave you an update on the hub. Things are moving along with that. One other thing that our sustainability coordinator does have a small request for you all. He is working on the city's sustainability plan, as you might be aware, and he would just welcome or invite you all if you have any suggestions or opportunities for his planning process to better connect with the priority neighborhoods. So if you have any events or any opportunities or any thoughts about how staff can better connect with the priority neighborhoods, we know that you all have already deep ties in those priority neighborhoods. If you could just send me an email. We would appreciate any input or thoughts that you had related to that sustainability plan. And that is all that I have, Chair.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. Next item. Does anybody have any additional announcements?
Just one.
Sure.
I'm going to make sure that, so we were talking about the Southdale Park redesign, and we have $460,000 in the budget, and I'm hoping we can get a really nice redesign of that park. I don't know if you've been through that park, but the town just kind of gave up on it. So we did get the basketball court repaved, but as it goes through the public process, I'm going to make sure this committee gets copied on that so you can attend the public meetings if you want, because I think it would be good for us to hear what the residents have to say. The other thing is that we are in the process, if the referendum passes, which we hope it will, one of the new staff positions in there is going to be a communications director. And we are, I know that I and several other alders are going to be quite insistent that this be a bilingual person, because right now we just don't have enough bilingual people on staff, and when we send stuff out to people, I'm sure all of you got the mailer about the referendum, which had this one tiny little paragraph in there in Spanish, which some of us were quite furious about, to be honest with you. So we have to do a better job communicating with our residents, and so hopefully we'll be able to move down that path if we get the referendum passed and we can recruit that person.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good information. I look forward to hearing about how that process works out, because as one of our newest, as our newest priority neighborhood, Southdale certainly deserves some attention for sure, and investment. So, okay. Any other announcements?
I have an announcement. Sure. So Leopold Elementary School has a yearly Tito Fest, and anybody from the community is invited, and I'm extending the invitation to anybody on this council, because it's a really wonderful opportunity to meet, like we just said, meet people in the neighborhood, and just see, what everybody is so proud about in the Leopold neighborhood. And that is May 18th, 8:30 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. is what I have in my calendar. I think that's correct. So yeah.
8:30 on a Saturday.
That might be the volunteer hours. That might be when you're supposed to show up as a volunteer. That may not be, but it's definitely Saturday, May 18. That part I know is absolutely accurate.
All right, fair enough. Yeah.
Is that at the school?
It sure is. Yeah, in the playground area. Yeah, lawn.
Have to get coffee before I arrive if I'm going to show up that early. But yes, excellent. Thank you. Okay. Any other announcements? Nope. All right. I guess we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Aye.